Hi, this is Braden Holtby.
Hey, this is Tanner the Bulldozer Bozer.
Hi, this is Brian Burke from Toronto, Ontario.
This is Daryl Sutter.
Hello, everyone. I'm Carly Agro from Sportsnet Central.
This is Jay Onright.
This is Quick Dick coming to you from Tofnell, Saskatchewan.
Hey, everybody. My name is Theo Fleury.
This is Kelly Rudy.
This is Corey Cross.
This is Wade Redden.
This is Jordan Tutu.
My name is Jim Pattison.
Hey, it's Ron McLean, Hockey Night in Canada and Rogers Hometown Hockey, and welcome to the Sean Newman Podcast.
Welcome to the podcast, folks. Happy Hump Day. Happy Wednesday. I hope everybody is enjoying the warm weather, at least up here north in the North Country. I tell you what, it is beautiful. I hope anywhere you're listening from, the sun's shining. Now, before we get on to today's legendary voice of the Oilers, let's get to today's episode sponsors. Jim Spenrath and team at Three Trees Tap and Kitchen. I was looking online, and they've been nominated for an Alberta Business Awards of Distinction. Now, these awards recognize businesses and organizations that have demonstrated outstanding achievement and contribution to their community while having developed business acumen and management practices to ensure long-term sustainability. Now, as we all know, Three Trees, fantastic place. Got to love the team they have over there. I read their comment back. This is what Three Trees had to say. They're flattered about this nomination. It's a result of having good fortune in so many ways. Three Trees is an awesome team, wonderful guests, and great community in which we get to work, play, and raise our families in. Thanks, everyone, for voting for them, or helping them up the ladder. I think that's pretty cool. It's a pretty cool nod, a little tip of the cap to Three Trees. I was talking about them today at work. A couple of the boys didn't realize you can get growlers filled there. I keep talking about it because, I mean, obviously we got Fourth Meridian, the local brewery, or you got Ribstone Creek, which is just down the way to the south of us, Edgerton country. Both of them can be filled there. For a guy who enjoys a sarsaparilla from time to time, get your growlers filled at Three Trees or call for a reservation, 780-874-7625. They'll treat you right there. HSI Group. They're the local oil field burners and combustion experts that can help make sure you have a compliant system working for you. The team also offers security, surveillance, and automation products for residential, commercial, livestock, and agricultural applications. I always talk about the fob, access to the door at the studio. It's just crazy what this technology can do now that I'm not fumbling for the keys anymore. When it's warm out, I never think about it, but when it is bloody cold, like a week ago, minus 50, and all you had to do is swipe that damn thing, I tell you what, I was pretty happy. So if you're looking for different ways to help improve the security around maybe your building, at your home, maybe you're out on the farm, give these guys a call at 306-825-6310 or stop in and see them at 3902 52nd Street. That's Brody or Kim. They use technology to give you peace of mind so you can focus on the things that truly matter. Mac Construction. They've been doing business locally for over 12 years with over 100 homes completed. Mac Construction is a design-build custom home building operation that has specialized in constructing custom homes, cottages, and RTMs throughout Lloydminster and community since 2008. In addition to custom home building, Mac Construction does extensive renovations to residences and light commercial work. If you're looking to build your dream house, head to macconstruction.ca and look no further. And finally, Jen Gilbert and team, over 40 years. Since 1976, the dedicated realtors of Coldwell Banker, Cityside Realty have served Lloydminster and the surrounding area. Did you know when it comes to rental properties, they are the biggest licensed residential property management company in the city of Lloydminster. They deal with over 250 rental units. We're talking houses, apartments, and condos. They do direct deposit, which means you don't even have to worry about collecting. They take care of all your headaches if you got rental properties. Stop in and see them. They also offer, on the flip side, for people looking for housing currently, they even offer up to month-to-month tenancies. They know that home is truly where awesomeness happens. Coldwell Banker, Cityside Realty, for everything real estate, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 780-875-3343. I got to give a shout-out to Read and Write. We're having a little fun this week. If you head into Factory Sports, Read and Write did up a little cardboard cutout of me, so to speak. I'm sitting on standing on a milk crate. I'm 6 feet tall. Any of you have seen me in person, I may not be that tall. But shout out to Deanna Wanler and team over at Read and Write. They keep making me look sharp. And if you want any outdoor signage, you make sure you stop in and see read and write. Let them know I sent you. Gartner Management, they're a Lloydminster-based company specializing in all types of rental properties to help meet your needs, whether you're looking for small office or 6,000 square foot commercial space. Give Wade Gartner a call, 780-808-5025. And if you're heading into any of these businesses, make sure you tell them you heard about them from the podcast, all right? Now, let's get on to that T-Bar 1, Tale of the Tape. Originally from Montreal, he got his start in media back in 1969. He had stops in Quebec City, Montreal, Newfoundland, Ontario, British Columbia, and finally Edmonton. He was the PA announcer for the Edmonton Oilers for 35 years. From 1981 to 2016, he announced every goal, assist, and penalty. He announced Gretzky's 50th in 39 games, the Oilers' 5 different Stanley Cup championships. He announced all of the Oilers' best. Gretzky, Curry, Messier, Fuhrer, Ranford, Lowe, Waite, Smith, Rolison, Pronger, Hall, Eberle, Nugent Hopkins, and of course, McDavid. He's an absolute legend. I'm talking about Mark Lewis. So buckle up. Here we go.
Hi, folks. This is Mark Lewis, and I welcome one and all to the Sean Newman Podcast.
Hey, well, welcome to the Sean Newman Podcast. Today, I'm joined by legendary voice, Mark Lewis. So first off, thanks for hopping on.
Yeah, you're welcome, Sean. I'm looking forward to this all week.
Well, I tell you what, I interviewed Byron Christopher a couple weeks ago, and after we were chatting, he said, you got to have Mark on. And I said, absolutely. I mean, I grew up going to Oilers games, listening to you do the announcing, and every goal was your voice. And I was in researching this, I started listening to old goals. Man, it gives me chills still.
Well, I did it for 35 years and retired at the end of the 15-16 season. Last game was, I guess, in April. I forget the exact date, April 6th or April 8th. And that was the first year Connor McDavid came into town to play, so I got to meet him. He was upstairs, injured, and he was injured by a defenseman, Brandon Manning, that eventually ended up finishing his career in the National Hockey League with the Oilers. Strange enough, but he was upstairs, quiet, really intense. Fire that's caught in the underbrush. It's very intense and very polite, very quiet. Five years later, I think he's now in his 6th NHL season. And he's turned, and he was just as exciting then as he is today. And he was 18 years old then.
Well, you got to witness over 35 years some exciting players, some exciting times. I was curious, how is it that you came to be the PA announcer for the Oilers? Like, did somebody come? Was that a calling card for you, or was that by fluke?
Well, I'll tell you, it was about good timing. I was working out at CTV. The radio station then was called 1260 CFRN in Edmonton, and I was out there, and I was music director, and I had an on-air shift. Also did sports on TV, it was then called CFRN TV. And we had a guy working in our building called Stan Ravendell, and he used to be the general manager of one of the radio stations in town that I didn't work for at the time, and he was leaving to take a management position in Moose Jaw, and he was the backup guy to the then public address announcer, a fellow named Gordon Ross. So I heard Stan was leaving, and I picked the phone up and called Bill Tuwilli, who was the communications public relations guy with the Oilers, and we knew one another. And I said, Bill, I'd like that position if possible. And it was, I called him in July of 1981 in the Canada Cup, starting in August. He said, well, we'll give you a try. How well do you know all of your languages? Russian, Polish, Czech. And I said, I can speak those three plus French and English and Spanish, which you're listening to the language I can speak right now. There weren't any others. But he hired me, and I knew that I hadn't seen a lot of these names, and I knew, boy, this is the audition, because if I can do okay here, I may get the backup with the Oilers. I learned quickly that you talk to the visiting radio people. Well, the visiting people, other than Team USA, they spoke languages I didn't know. So you speak to the media people. You find out quickly where you had to go to find out how to pronounce these names. And one thing that really surprised me, CTV was doing the television side of the Canada Cup in Edmonton, and they had a guy doing the play-by-play that was a very well-known television announcer on the CTV network. And my booth in the old Coliseum was right next door to him. Finns were playing another team, and he was butchering the names. It was like, they came out of his mouth, and by the time they hit the floor, there was blood all over the floor. He just butchered it. And I said to myself, holy smokes. It impressed upon me that, if you're going to put your name out there, reputation on the line as a broadcaster, as a sports reporter, that's part of your job. You better show up and do this stuff right. And to Willie said, after the Canada Cup, we'd like to do the job, and I got it and started doing the PA work shortly into the season. Gordon Ross was still there, but he left to go to Ottawa for a job at the communications company in Ottawa. And the strangest thing in the world, he was back 2 weeks later. Something happened. But the Oilers stuck with me. And it's like anything else. If you're in the broadcast business and you're going to go on the air, you've got to prepare, because you're responsible for the content between the songs. And that content had better be good, or as good as you can make it. And with the hockey game, they give you a script, so that part of it's taken care of. But it's up to you to announce the goals and say the guy's name correctly. I don't mean to go on and on and on with this, but that's just all part of the package you bring to the table. That's your responsibility.
Well, you hit the jackpot, so to speak, because you kind of, Oilers are just a new team in the NHL, but it isn't long after 81, and you're getting to witness history right in front of your eyes.
Well, I did the play-by-play for two teams in the 1979 1980 season, two teams from the Western Hockey League. The Brandon Wheat Kings weren't sending anybody on the road to do the games. So they, in each city where the Wheat Kings would go and play, they hired a guy. I had a former Oilers, a goaltender, come with me to do that every time the Wheat Kings were in. They played at the old Edmonton Gardens in Edmonton. And so I got to see a lot of really good hockey players that played with the Oil Kings, played with the Wheat Kings, and also the Regina Pats. On occasion that year, 1979, 1980, needed a play-by-play guy. And they phoned and asked me. I said, yeah, I'll do them. So, I went over with the equipment. I had Ken Brown, a former goaltender. He played with the Chicago Blackhawks, played with the WHA Edmonton Oilers. He was doing the color commentary. I had about as much. I shouldn't have been doing the play-by-play. I'd have enough. I'd have more success herding cats out in the field. It was a lot of fun. And I met a fellow named Dunk McCallum, who since passed. He had Brian Propp, Brad McCrimmon. He had a lot of really good first-rate hockey players on the Wheat Kings that went on to play pro hockey for a lot of years. And the same thing with the Regina Pats. They had a handful of players. There's always one or two per team that are going to go on and have some kind of a pro career. But it was a lot of fun. And the story I'm telling is Wayne Gretzky was 17 years old. He played with the Edmonton Oilers of the WHA. And that was in the 78-79 season. So he's in watching. Oh, I'm sorry. The games I were doing for the WHL were 78-79. He played with the WHA Oilers. That's right. Gretzky came over to the Edmonton Gardens to watch some junior hockey. For 17 years old. So he was one of our guests for a while. And we got to meet him a little bit, got to know him reasonably well while he was playing with the Oilers. And, but he was 6 feet tall, 160 or 170 pounds. Slender, but he had more between the ears than most people do. Just very gifted. It's like all the top players really have special talents and gifts. He really did. I haven't seen anyone like him today. I've seen some very dynamic players, but nothing that could compare to him, in my opinion. He just a special kind of talent. It was, you're watching all these Stanley Cups, and you're watching, if Grant Fuhr led in 6 goals, well, I guess they thought they'd have to score 7 to win, and they often did it. It was just pretty special hockey.
And would have kept you busy, them scoring 7 goals every night. So if I heard that correctly, you're saying as you're doing the color commentating or the play-by-play, for WHL games, Gretzky as a 17-year-old would be your guest on your show?
Yeah. We saw him sitting in the stands all by himself. He was there to meet with his agent. And he's at the old Edmonton Gardens, right across the street from the Coliseum on the other side of 118th Avenue. And the gardens were since disappeared. They were taken down, and they've got the World Trade Center is there right now. And but 17-year-old kid, he's too young, can't get into the bar. You've got to be 21. Then I think you had to be 21 then. And he's a teenager. He came over to watch a hockey game, and he was waiting for his agent. And I think his agent then, I could be correct, it was Fidelli. We saw him in the stands, and I said, I motioned to him, and I said, "Come on," and he came down. And "How would you like to sit in and guest with us?" And he said, "Sure." And he sat there and watched the game with us up in the where we were doing the game from. And we added a touch of how the games were done on the radio with Rod Phillips. That's how we did the games, and we interviewed people before the game and got their opinion about how the game is going to unfold. And it was just a great experience. But being in Edmonton, where the Oilers, the WHA Oilers, tremendous hockey, very entertaining. The NHL came in. That was pretty special. We were seeing all these guys that up till then we only saw on TV. And they had 20, you had 18 skaters and 2 goalies. And the difference between the NHL and the WHA was 4 or 5 or 6 players that were in the lineup that were much better than the 4 or 5 or 6 players you'd fill out a WHA lineup with. The NHL was paying some serious dollars, tragically serious dollars now, but a lot of guys that played in the WHA would have been second liners, third liners in the NHL, and that is no injustice to the WHA people. Just more players and really established pros in the NHL lineup.
Mark, your audio is coming in and out. Is there anything on your end you're seeing?
Oh, I'm sitting right here, just sitting in front of my laptop. I got a clear screen. I've got the micro. Everything's normal. Let me just see if there's anything I'm not doing. No.
Okay, well we'll keep going, and we'll just see how it comes out at the end. It's all good. It just a couple times your voice goes quiet on me.
Okay.
What was it like then to have a guy like Wayne Gretzky as a 17-year-old sit in on your broadcast, and then only a short few years later, be sitting there, being in the building for 1984, when the Oilers, what is it, May 19th, 1984, they're playing the Islanders, who have just won back to back to back, right? Like they're just a juggernaut. What was that night like? That had to have been special.
Well, that was our first Stanley Cup win, May 19th. And to have that happen in Alberta, I'm pretty special. Previous to it happening here in Alberta, and previous to, the Oilers joining the NHL, and the Flames moving from Atlanta to Calgary, everything was on TV. So actually to see NHL hockey here and then to really luck out and able to have a guy like Gretzky on your team, and everybody knew he was special. You could see it. And, they had to add from the first team, they added a couple of players to the team that started the next year, and they improved. And they really had some solid NHL players. They had terrific goaltending. They had two really good, one goaltender now in the Hall of Fame, and the other, Andy Moog, played a lot of years. Really good goaltender. They had great defense. They had Glenn Anderson, Messier, Blair McDonald in the early years. I mean, they had some just terrific hockey players, and they practiced at a pace that was a whole lot quicker than most teams played the game. So it was very intense. Some very, very gifted hockey players. And it was their time.
How fun was it calling the goals in that game, though? Or anything? How just being in the building?
Well, being in the building, and then you're working. And I did a bunch of games last summer in the NHL bubble. I think I did about 15 games, and no fans in the building. And I can remember all those games in the 1980s where the fans were there, and the fans are a huge part of that experience. The emotion the fans bring to the game really, really has an awful lot to do with your energy level with the players. Because the fans really get the players pumped and really get the players going. And if you're performing in front of a crowd and you're performing in front of fans, your home fans, you want to bring your A game. You don't want to have an off night. You want to bring your A game. I mean, it's pride that it becoming a pro player, performing in the best league in the world at a very high level. But the fans, that element, that what they bring to the game is huge, absolutely huge. It's missing these days for reasons we all know, but watching it in the 1980s with the fans being loud, passionate, and the games are wild. Seeing Paul Coffey come in as a graduating junior player, one of the best skaters I ever saw. It took him a year or two to find his defensive game. Everyone was patient to wait for it. And you saw a guy like Kevin Lowe, who's in the Hall of Fame, terrific hockey player. You saw Dave Semenko, very valuable player to that team. He brought his game, and his game where everyone knows what his game was all about, to take care of the players. That element is still needed today. The physical presence. It was just exciting. It was terrific hockey.
Well, over your 35-year span, you got the 80s, you got all the cups, you got the 90s of, those years of the Dallas Stars rivalry. And then in 2006, you had the surprise run to the Stanley Cup Finals.
That was the loudest I'd ever heard the building.
Was in
The
2006?
2006 Stanley Cup Final. I have never heard it louder. That was the loudest. So unexpected. And I remember that they opened 2006 Stanley Cup playoffs. They squeaked in and made the playoffs the last few days of the season, facing powerful Detroit Red Wings. And they beat the Red Wings in the opening round. The very last player to leave the ice, and before he stepped off the ice, took a look around, because that was his last game, Steve Yzerman. And then they went on to play the Sharks. Terrific, unexpected. And all of a sudden, they're in the Stanley Cup Final. All of a sudden, they have a really good chance to win the Stanley Cup. It was a legitimate win by the Carolina Hurricanes, because had they lost their number one goaltender, it might have been different. The Oilers lost their number one goaltender, Dwayne Rollison, in that series to injury. But stuff happened. A well-deserved win for the Carolina Hurricanes, but just exciting hockey and very competitive. And if you were weak of heart, you didn't want to be in that. And it was so loud, you couldn't hear anything.
Well, that's what I was curious about. The 80s of the dynasty and the Cup wins, and 4 of them coming on home soil, versus
Right.
the 2006. But you say the 2006, it was louder than the 80s.
In my opinion, it was the loudest I've ever heard in that building. And I continued on for another 10 years past the 2006 Stanley Cup Final as the PA announcer in that building. And I would say so. Others may not, but I mean, gosh, I had 16 or 1700 appearances in that building doing my thing. I was hired by the NHL to go down to the States for a number of years in cities where, in the preseason, in cities where they didn't have teams, like Dallas and Houston, Oklahoma City. They had a game there. I remember Travis Green getting a penalty for the New York Islanders. He came and sat in the penalty box for me. He just kept muttering, "He doesn't like me. Look at me. Oh, the referee doesn't like me." And I said, "You've got to be polite to these guys." And he's now coaching in Vancouver. He wouldn't remember it, but it was just funny. The ice in Oklahoma City was terrible. Bumps along the boards, puddles of ice. They'd be a couple of inches high, little round mounds of ice. But, then we went to Tampa Bay, playing in what was then called the Florida Suncoast Dome in the preseason baseball park. And they were in danger of having the game called off because the ice was melting. So we had a fellow that I worked with a couple of occasions, Greg Pilling, a former pro coach and pro hockey player. He figured out how to save the ice. And they covered the ice. They stretched tarps, these plastic tarps, across the boards, and they suspended them above the ice, 3 or 4 feet above the ice, and blew cool air in. And they were able to get the game, and they did that the day before the game and the day of the game. But anyway, that was an aside story. And then we went over to Miami, played in the Miami arena, and it was hot. It was 85 degrees with 95% humidity. So saving ice was a real challenge. But, the fans were new to the game in most of those cities. But you still had to bring the game because they wanted a legitimate, everyday, good old-fashioned NHL game. And that was quite an experience. But, maybe their buildings are loud and passionate now, but back then it was more entertainment. And no one cheered for anybody. And the Edmonton Oilers came down and the game was sold out. They wanted to see number 99, number 11, number 9, Glenn Anderson. yeah, that was kind of a hoop. But getting back, we know what NHL hockey is like in Canada, and for much of the United States. Successful teams have their fans, and the fans just mean so much to the energy.
It's a pretty from being in radio and then finding your way into, being a public address announcer and becoming a very almost part of the fabric of the Edmonton Oilers for that many years. As a kid, I can hear it immediately. Your voice, whenever there was a goal or here come your Edmonton Oilers, and like there's very fond memories of that old building. The Coliseum, or I guess it changed so many times. Skyreach, Rexall. I wasn't around. I was born in '86, so I don't remember much of the '80s, if anything. But you got to call. I assume in your career there was a couple of goals that were scored that just stick out. Maybe Wayne Gretzky, or maybe Connor McDavid's first goal, maybe. Or how about Wayne Gretzky scoring 50 and 39? That night had to have been like, can he do this? Can he pull this off? Like, you wouldn't have needed anyone to tell you to get excited for that one.
I mean, the highlight, seeing Brett Hull come in. He was playing with the St. Louis Blues, and he scored his 70th goal of whatever year that was. That was pretty special. So, generally speaking, you gave a lot of energy when you're announcing the Oilers goals, and you really turned the energy level down when you were announcing other team goals. But for that Brett Hull goal, I really gave it a pump. And I had Bill Twilley, the PA guy, come over, and Bruce McGregor, the former general manager, came over and said, "You got to tone that down." And I said, "Come on, guys, 70 goals." And but they were on the wrong end of the score that night. The local team was, so I can understand where they're coming from. You see good players playing really good hockey, scoring really good goals. You get jacked. It's exciting. I'm going to watch. I still watch the Oilers on TV now. As a member of the Edmonton Oilers alumni, I get to go to a few games a year. But it's just you show up. If you're a fan of the game and you see the best players in the world scoring some tremendous goals, Jordan Eberle's very first goal in the NHL. You may remember that came against the Calgary Flames in its first. That was terrific. Connor McDavid splitting the defense against the Columbus Blue Jackets at Rexall Place. I mean, that just had everybody standing up in there. They stood up, and clapped, and cheered. I mean, you see some super talents, super players, really, really showing you the kind of talent they have. I mean, it's amazing to see that in person. What a lot! It was just great.
You must have got excited when they, when you mentioned Eberle or McDavid, or you just go down the list of names. When you're going through the sheet and you got a new guy that hasn't scored a goal at home before, or maybe even in the season or his career, just to see him score and to get to announce it must have been a thrill for you.
Well, I met a couple of fellas that came in and played a handful of games for the Oilers. And they came in and said, "You know what? I used to come and listen to you with my dad when I played minor hockey in Edmonton, or minor hockey in Lloydminster or Lac-La-Biche or Fort McMurray. And to hear you still doing the games. And then when I scored a goal for you to announce that, I mean, they came to me and said that was just incredible." And I said, "Yeah, I'm just, it's all part of it." So, doing what I did, I part of the entertainment package. The most important part, of course, was on the ice, but part of the game night presentation, it was just a huge thing to be doing for many years. I stayed ahead of the law on that one to do it for 35 years.
What's the one part you miss, Mark? Like, if you could go back, and is it being in the routine? Is it being in the rink? Is it announcing? Is it being around the other media people, the players? What's the one part you go back to?
You know what? I don't miss it at all.
Don't miss it?
No, I did it for 35 years. A huge commitment, huge time commitment. And, we'd like to get away in the wintertime. We travel, and you can't do that when you have a commitment like that. You can't take a month off or more. And it was time, it was time to go. It was the last year at Rexall Place. So I said, that's it. This is the year. I'm done. And I can remember Bob Nicholson and Craig McTavish and Kelly Brookberger coming up to me saying, you got to open Rogers. I said, thanks, but I can't. It's just time to go. And that was long enough. And after a while, you get tired of minus 30 weather. You get tired of snow and the ice. We just went through that in Alberta, where it was minus 30 and minus 40 with the wind chill for 2 weeks or 2.5 weeks. That's not a lot of fun, is it?
No, it sure makes you remember that you're Canadian, though. When I think we got to it was minus like 48 with the wind chill here. So.
Oh man, hey, you're right out there in the middle of the bald prairie, and you've got the wind whistling down the street, and you say to yourself, "Why am I here?" But when you get to a certain point, you get into your 60s, and you say, okay, there are other things I want to do. And it was just time. You got to know when it's time. And I made that decision to go, time to let somebody else take over.
That last night, your last night in the building at Rexall, was that a fun night? Was that surreal?
Well, they had so many players from the Oilers teams, including the WHA, and most of them from the NHL. I don't know how many players have played for the Oilers, but I bet you they had, I'm going to guess, and I could be off, but I bet you they had 15 or 20% of the guys who played for the Oilers there that night, including some players I'd never heard of. Some guys with the WHA Oilers that played one game. And he showed up, a fellow named Danny Arndt, played one game for the WHA Oilers. He showed up and he was there. He was the first guy to come out. They introduced them alphabetically. But the pregame show on that last night, or maybe it was postgame, I think they did it after the game, if memory serves. It took, I think, 90 minutes to introduce all of them. And it was a tremendous way to say goodbye to place and acknowledge all of the players that were available. Many of the Europeans didn't come. Many of the NHLers, although they were approached and asked if they'd come, and transportation and accommodations provided, but many of them couldn't make it. But what a night that was. And the microphone I used, I've got it here. It was an old-fashioned microphone, like those old desk microphones that were about a foot high, but they were state-of-the-art. Looked old. The Oilers gave me that with a little plaque on the bottom, with my name, Mark Lewis, 1981, 2016, 35 years in appreciation. That was kind of nice. And then, but it's time to go, time to move on, and it's time for someone else to do it. I'll watch the hockey. I don't miss the traffic after the games. I've had, of all of the, I'm a Canadian. I've seen enough snow and ice, cold weather over my many years above ground that, it's nice to get away from it. It was time to do it.
Okay, well, as we wrap up here, because I know you got to get going, just the Crude Master Final five quick questions, just boom, 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 as quick or as short as you want to go,
Sure.
Mark. So if you could sit down with one individual like I'm doing with you, who would you take?
If I could sit down with one individual, I'd like to sit down with Jean Beliveau, former captain of the Montreal Canadiens. I met Rocket Richard. I met his brother Henri. I met many of them. I never met Jean Beliveau. Interesting guy, a gentleman, a pretty smart man. That would be one.
Who's the one individual you have been able to sit down with that made a lasting impression?
Gordie Howe. He was polite, gentleman, humble. I guess he knew the kind of impact he had and the kind of player he was. He was just like the everyday person. He came from good people, came from a great province next door to Alberta. Incredibly gifted. He was nice. He was nice to talk to.
If you got to come back for one game, to do one game, could not be the Edmonton Oilers, what organization would you want to sit and announce for?
Well, I offered this to Harold Ballard back in the 80s. I said, if you ever want a guy to fill in while you're looking for a public address announcer, because they had a cast of a few that year, give me a call. He never did. But it would be nice to do one in the Air Canada Centre. I guess it's now Scotiabank, Toronto. That, big building, great sound. It'd be kind of nice to do it, one in there.
Do you have one piece of advice for people getting into the media business?
Make sure that you have a fallback career you can go to, because the state of the media these days, and it's largely due to what the media is all about right now, largely due to what we're going through in the entire world. People aren't spending money; they're not going out. So many businesses are closed. So many radio stations and television stations have cut people back. So many network radio stations, if you're part of a 7 or 8 or 9 station network, a lot of those radio stations, there's nobody in the buildings operating, carrying programming from elsewhere. So a lot of people are work, laid off, second career. But if you're going to get into it, you really have to have more than just one talent. You have to be able to do several things. You have to be able to show your employer they can't do without you. I know in the mid 80s, I left the music director, the programming side, and I get into the sales end of it. And I'm still in the media business. And I'm a radio and digital sales rep for a company based in Edmonton that it's the Indigenous Radio Network across Alberta. A terrific opportunity and a lot of fun. But you have to really have and yet your skills have to be curved. And you have to offer value. You have to show your employer they can't do without you. You bring good value. Not much more I could say about that.
Here's your final one then. In the 35 years with the Oilers, who was somebody that most people probably don't recognize that was played a big part in the Edmonton Oilers? Not a player, but another Mark Lewis, so to speak. Was it? I don't know. There must have been somebody behind the scenes that didn't get a lot of credit.
The people that there are so many. The people responsible for keeping the building open, operating, making sure the ice is the very best it can be. The building maintenance people, the ice makers, the people that drive the Zambonis, they're really important. And then the people that work in the building that provide the food services. I mean, that's, for 16,800 people, such as they put in Rexall Place, and the 18,000 plus they have in Rogers Place. I mean, you have to be, you have to be offering the very best quality in terms of, food services, the entertainment value. I mean, it's, I guess maybe it all comes down to one person. Everyone's going to the building to be treated and to be entertained. And really, it's up to the general manager on the scouting staff to be able to go out and find what they can fit in their budget to put on the ice so that people will keep wanting to come back. So probably the senior executive of the hockey club that's responsible for the talent, that puts the product on the ice that people will pay, buy season tickets. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, absolutely, it does. Yeah, I guess I get the talent. You got to have the talent on the ice. I just wondered, I used to think the little things didn't matter as much. And as I get older, I understand the little things really do matter. And so having Mark Lewis call the goals is something that kids my age and older, for that matter, all remember. And it is like, wow, that was like really good. Like that's a really good little, and that's just a little piece of it. Having Paul, was it Laurier?
Paul Lorio.
Lorio. Sing the national anthem for as long as he did. And he passed away, but when he was doing it, he was fantastic. And that's one of the iconic things from 2006 is him singing and giving it over to the crowd. And another one.
He was the very first one ever to do that in the league, period.
Yeah. And
contrary to what the now departed anthem singer out in Vancouver would state, that he was the first one to do it. How arrogant is that?
Arrogant. Very arrogant. Because everybody remembered.
Everyone does.
And another one who just passed was Joey Moss. He was another little piece of like the Oilers, and just if you were a fan of the team, there was just different things that little tiny things that helped make up the team. And so I was just curious, from a guy who had been on the inside of it, if you had seen, I don't know. I honestly have no idea. That's why I was throwing it to you. But as far as bringing the talent in, absolutely. I mean, you got to have something there for the people to come watch, but the little things do matter.
Oh, they certainly do. I remember Joey Moss, got to know him on a casual basis. He was very close to the team, also close to the football team in Edmonton, but started with and spent all of his years with the Oilers. He was part of the team. The only thing he didn't do was wear skates. That's how important he was to the organization. And he used to stand behind the Oilers bench, right by the passageway from the bench back into the dressing room, and he'd sing the national anthem, and you could hear him. You could hear him in the building. We were up in the press box, way up on the top of the building, and you could hear him. You could look over and see him, and hear him, and everyone loved it. And that was just another part of hockey. In the NHL, in Rexall Place and all the other places, and the different names at that building from time to time, and then he did it in Rogers Place as well. He was a character, and everyone loved him.
Yeah, he was one of the best. He made being an Oiler fan a lot of fun.
He sure did.
Well, I really appreciate you making some time for me today and cutting out. I kept you a little bit longer than I meant to, Mark, but appreciate you sitting down with me and sharing some stories and a little bit about your time with the Edmonton Oilers.
Thank you. It was a pleasure, Sean, and all the best, and stay safe.
Thank you. Hey, folks, thanks for joining us today. If you just stumbled on the show, please click subscribe. Then scroll to the bottom and rate and leave a review. I promise it helps. Remember, every Monday and Wednesday, we will have a new guest sitting down to share their story. The Sean Newman Podcast is available for free on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and wherever else you get your podcast fix. Until next time.